Hello, fellers. So, you've heard the news as well. Ace of Thunder now has confirmed HOTAS support, or HOTAS. It stands for Hands-On Throttle and Stick Control. Now, I'm not here to waste your time today. I'll get right to the point. You don't have many options. In fact, these are all the supported HOTASes that the PlayStation 5, which is the only console that you can play Ace of Thunder on as of right now, only has one flight stick that is currently recognized, and that is the T.Flight HOTAS. Now, that is unfortunate. Not to say that T.Flight HOTAS is in any way particularly poor at its job, but it is nice to have some competition, something that incentivizes Thrustmaster to come out with a new version. Personally, I've had mine for 6 years, almost 7 years. It'll be 2024 in about a month. So I've had mine since 2017. And I must say that when you go to look up a T.Flight HOTAS, you're gonna see reports about drift, you're gonna see reports about things wearing out. I have never had any issue with my Thrustmaster ever. I also hear that I'm quite lucky when I share that perspective. I must say that mine's held up very well. I'm gonna be showing you my setup very soon, since this is the only setup that we're going to have for Ace of Thunder, and I've been the person kind of covering these things on YouTube. Now, before I show you the state of my sim controls and my sim setup, I do want to say that I've actually played the game that Ace of Thunder is going to be ported from since 2017 as well. I've been playing War Thunder, and exclusively War Thunder Sim, for those 6 to 7 years. And I'm somebody who personally enjoys flying props far more than I enjoy flying jets. My squad mates will say it's a skill issue. I beg to differ. I kind of am of the perspective that props require far more delicacy than jets do. And that's why having a good control scheme is very important. Now, I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of my setup. So I haven't cleaned anything. I know some people might think that's a little gross, but I kind of want to show you guys just the raw controls themselves, right? So this is the flight stick. This over here, we move the mic over, I hope that's still recording, is the throttle. So as you can see, this is quite old. It's mostly being able to tell by the rust and some of the dust right here, but honestly, it's really not too bad. The buttons still all work. This is a little pipper that you can move to the side. It's kind of like its own little joystick, right? We have our triggers, we have our, I have them binded to rockets and bombs up here at the front, as well as these two controls on top. Now at the very bottom of this, on the base, you actually do have something that is meant to tighten your control scheme. So if you wanted this looser, you can unscrew that and it will make the whole thing be easier to turn to the right or to the left. If you're somebody who enjoys stiffness, you can tighten that and it'll be more resistance whenever you go to move that control scheme. Now over here we have the throttle, and this is actually acts as the yaw controls and as your throttle controls if you don't have the rudder pedals themselves. So this button on the back here is a toggle, right? So if you hit the right side, you can map that to the yaw controls. Over here is the left side. Now I am gonna tell you guys, if you ever get these controls and you open them out of the box, they're not going to feel amazing, right? Especially if you're coming from the PC perspective, where you've had maybe full metal controls before, or something that feels a little bit better on your hands. This might feel like a toy to you, and I can see that being a little bit jarring. But I do want to say that these controls, as poor of a condition that they may visually look in, have never ever given me any types of issues in 6 to 7 years. With that being said, they are not perfect. For example, this little control here on the back does not have any resistance to it. For these to work down here, they have quite a bit of play, right? So you can be very fine with your movements. They move a lot, right? And all of this movement is represented in these yaw controls by these very, very slight movements. See, I'm already at the end. That's the full one, I'm already at the end. That's it. When you're in a dogfight, this little percent of just maybe a quarter, right, is being presented by all of this movement. So, especially since there's no spring inside of these controls, it makes using these quite difficult. For that reason alone, I also recommend getting the Thrustmaster pedals. These actually have another control scheme built in that I'll show you guys later that make it easier to taxi. And by the way, I'm sorry if this feels like it's turning into more of a product review. I would love to give you other options and other things to use, but unfortunately right now we don't have that. And I do actually think it's about time, especially with the price points that this 6 to 7 year old T.Flight HOTAS and these rudder pedals are at, being almost $200 as combo, $85 I believe right now as of Amazon. For the T.Flight HOTAS alone, and $130 for the pedals, $200 if you buy them combined. I feel like we're at a point after all these years, since these ones were originally made for the PlayStation 4, that we can finally have a new generation of throttle and HOTAS controls for PlayStation. I know Xbox has quite a few, that's not really their issue, but you know what they don't have? They don't have VR, and they're not gonna have Ace of Thunder, so we do win up in that scenario. And I do want to say that for those people who are like PC players who have used better HOTAS controls in the past, when you're in VR, when you're in full VR and that's your world, what these look like aren't going to be that important. The important part is what they feel like. And from my personal experience of years of gaming using the same planes that we're going to be seeing in game on the same engine that we're going to be seeing in game with the same company and all of this, that these are more than suitable for your task. Now, I do want to show you what they look like in game, so we're going to get to that right now. So I can demonstrate to you guys what these control schemes look like on the actual controllers. Now, aileron controls are going to be controlled with the flight stick, obviously, using roll. So I can slide it over, nice and smooth, right? Over to the left and over to the right, just like this. So that's like that wing, and it will be like that on the other wing. We can back up here and also look at our elevator position. And as you can see, when I pull back on the stick, that elevator rises up and it presses down just like that. Now for the throttle, when I press this forward, the engine spools up and it wants to go. I can release off the brakes, bring it to the right a little bit, and it's going to start to go. Let's say I want to abort the takeoff, pull this thing all the way back, try to get out of the air, land it smoothly with just my feet, get on the brakes, and go. And come to a complete stop. I also want to demonstrate what I mean by yaw controls with your foot pedals. So when I press this to the right, as you can see, that rudder is moving. When I bring it to the left, it's moving again. So all the way to the right and all the way to the left. Now, I'm going to increase the throttle here, and you guys are going to watch how I'm going to have absolutely no controls on that rudder, and I'm going to turn the plane to the right just by pressing down on my right toe. Watch this as I slow down. All the way to the right. That's because when I press down on this, that gives brake on the right side of the aircraft. I might flip over here. Just a little wingtip stall. Okay, we're fine. A little rock. I can do the exact same thing as that with my left toe. So this controls steering on the ground, combined, especially when you put in rudder controls and the brake. Now, having brake controls independently and being able to control the level at which I want them, so for aircraft that love to tip over and flip you over, let's say the Chaika, let's say the Spitfire, aircraft with stronger brakes and usually a lighter airframe, they love to tip over. So you don't have to give 100% brake power, you can just give about half. What I've gone and done now is I've unbinded my foot pedal controls and I've binded them to what is called the rocker back here. So for 2 years, by choice, well, less of choice and more of, I'm kind of stupid and I thought the foot pedals were broken. They were not by any means. I'm just kind of dumb. I was using the rocker right here. So as you can see, when I press on this, how fast that rudder moves. So it's very quick, very slight movements, but very quick, especially towards the end. Now, if you guys have flown some of these aircraft, especially at slower speeds and at higher altitudes where you really need to be precise, this is not ideal at all. In sustained dogfights, and a lot of the times when you're injured with your aircraft, what you want to be able to do is kind of, it's called trim it out. So you can do that very easily with foot pedals and hold it there, right? So what that would look like doing this would be holding it to the left or holding it to the right. And you got to hold that super precisely, especially while you're moving the joystick. A lot of the times you'll press it a little too far and you'll end up wing stalling and going over on whichever side you press too hard on. Now that is certainly not ideal. And if you're saying, well, why don't you just trim it out using trim controls? Well, okay, I'll go to do that in my 109. Here we go, trim. Oh, sorry, there's no rudder trim control. Some planes don't have certain trim controls. Now, if you don't know what trim is, we'll probably get to that in a later video, a much later video, closer to when the game is actually coming out. So this is what my setup looks like. Mind you, the screen is a little closer than what it normally would be. Throttle controls over here, stick controls over here, and foot pedals on the ground. Now this thing in the middle is a part of a racing wheel from this thing back here that I would plug into this and then do a completely different sim setup. But I actually cannibalized this platform right here from my old racing sim setup from my old bedroom. Now I don't need to use that old setup, but I do actually have an instructional video about how to build something like this for extremely cheap from scratch. That video is quite old, and it's one of those things that personally I look back on and I'm like, that's a little cringy. But you know what? It actually has helped thousands of people build a sim setup and to get one of these on, which is essentially a $6 head tracker for consoles and for PlayStation. Now, while I'm unable to guarantee to you guys that all of these control schemes are going to work flawlessly in Aces of Thunder, as it is an unreleased game, what I can promise you as somebody who's trying to follow the game, that I am going to keep you up to date no matter what happens, whether it completely flops, whether you don't play on HOTAS at all and you just want to use a controller, or whether you actually do want to use these VR hand controls, which I'm certainly going to give a try to as well. They're definitely worth exploring. This is just an option that I think a lot of people are going to be curious about, and I want to get this video out for you guys. I'll be following this game at every single turn, every single update. I'm going to continue breaking news that I have before, both on the subreddits and here on YouTube. YouTube is my primary platform. If you're coming from the subreddits, please subscribe. I will stay here and be here. If you're a usual person who's coming back for my content, I apologize for how many Ace of Thunder videos there have been recently. I really am working on large videos in the background. I've been editing them 2 to 3 hours per day for the last 2 weeks. So they are getting worked on. They are very large, but they are in the works. So thank you all for watching. I'm trying to get this quality of videos up. Thanks for sticking around. If you're interested in Ace of Thunder, subscribe, like the video. I'll see you all in the next one. Adios.